Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, "'Tis the Season for Ransomware." I'm Ella and I'm one of your hosts today, joined by Michael and Martin from Holker IT and Seamus from ThreatLocker. So in this session, we're going to discuss why ransomware attacks increase during the festive period, how these attacks work, and most importantly, what you can do to protect your business from them. A little housekeeping before we begin. The session will last about an hour, including a Q&A at the end. I encourage you to ask lots of questions in the chat throughout, and we'll get to them during the Q&A section at the end of the presentation. The agenda will run as follows. Understanding ransomware, live ransomware demo on an unprotected PC, live ransomware demo on a ThreatLocker protected PC, key takeaways and security strategies, and a Q&A. Let's dive in as I hand you over to Martin.
Thanks, Ella. So why do cyber attacks, particularly ransomware, surge during the holiday period? There are a key few reasons why. Reduced IT staffing. Many businesses operate with a skeleton staff during the Christmas period, and cybercriminals obviously know this. When IT teams are short-staffed, it's easier for attacks to slip through. Employee distractions. With the Christmas plans on their minds, employees may be less cautious. They may be more likely to click on phishing links within emails and download malicious files. Increased online activity. The festive season sees a spike in e-commerce, financial transactions and online activity. This provides more opportunities for hackers to target businesses. The stats shown here highlight the increase in attacks during the festive season over the past few years. Ransomware, in particular, sees a massive uptake during this period. Attackers know that businesses are under pressure to stay operational and may be more likely to pay their ransoms. A question for everybody. How many of you have experienced or heard of cyber attacks? Feel free to drop your answers in the chat.
Thanks, Martin. So, ransomware is far from a one-size-fits-all threat. Cybercriminals employ a range of sophisticated methods these days to target businesses. In 2024, some of the most commonly used tactics across the board include, as you'd probably imagine, phishing. To this day, it's still the top method for deploying ransomware. These deceptive emails, they are designed to appear legitimate. They often mimic people within an organisation or a business, or colleagues, partners, suppliers, you name it, they're there. They trick you into clicking malicious links, downloading infected files, providing sensitive information like passwords. You know, the list is endless, what they try and do. Once the user takes the bait, ransomware is activated, potentially encrypting data across the network, your device, across other people's devices, causing widespread disruption. Despite increased awareness on phishing, it continues to be highly effective because it's ever evolving, it changes all the time, and the ability to bypass basic security measures. So if you don't have an anti-spam filter or anything like that, you're generally going to get these in your inbox quite often. Then we move over to something called weak passwords and credential stuffing. Cybercriminals exploit weak or reused passwords to gain unauthorized access to systems. So when people go on at you telling you to change your password all the time, this is the reason why. Using a tactic called credential stuffing, attackers deploy automated tools, essentially, to test stolen login credentials from previous data breaches across multiple platforms. So if users reuse the same password across accounts, it significantly increases the chance of a successful breach. So in any case, it's never good. This method is particularly effective against businesses without MFA enabled, so multi-factor authentication, or robust password policies, leaving critical systems highly vulnerable. So you need to keep on top of passwords or have a decent password manager in place to prevent these kinds of things. And then finally, we have malicious downloads. So cybercriminals often rely on compromised websites or fake software updates to trick users into downloading ransomware. Now, these malicious downloads are disguised as legitimate files, as you'll see later on in the demo. Software patches or updates even, making them appear trustworthy, right? If you see an update pop up on your PC, you're generally going to click it. So once downloaded, the ransomware infiltrates the system, encrypts files, and spreads across the network rapidly. You can't stop it unless you have a strong security control or proper user training. Businesses are left exposed to these deceptive and damaging attacks if you don't have the right things in place. And that's why it's imperative to put them in place in the first place. Ransomware isn't a problem for big businesses, or it's not just a problem for big businesses. It's also a problem for smaller businesses and medium-sized businesses. Just as vulnerable, if not more so actually. They don't have the same security protections as a larger corporation would. They invest millions of pounds a year on a SOC, for example, or an EDR, an XDR. If you just have basic AV, at this point, in this day and age, it's probably not enough. So it's definitely much easier to fall for the traps these days, especially during the busy periods like Christmas and the holidays. So it's easier for these attacks to slip through the net, and well, it's until it's too late, you'll never know. So here's the first tip. Make sure your employees are trained to recognize phishing emails. This is absolutely imperative. So if you don't have one now, get a phishing campaign set up within your business, spread it across the year, and spread that awareness. Your first line of defense and your last line of defense is your people. So let's do a quick poll. How confident are you that your employees can spot a phishing email? Type 1, very confident, in the chat, 2 for somewhat confident, and 3 for not confident. And if you're not confident, we're here to help you and guide you through the process of how to make your business more secure. And we'll have a chat at the end. And let's move on to the next slide. Now, let's break down what happens during a typical ransomware attack. The initial infection. The first stage of a ransomware attack begins when malicious software infiltrates the system. This often occurs through common attack vectors like phishing emails, malicious downloads, or compromised credentials. During this phase, the ransomware will quietly install itself, evade detection, and essentially begin preparing your system for further exploitation. Early detection and swift action at this point is critical to preventing widespread damage across the network. Then we move on to encryption. Once the ransomware is in, it swiftly begins encrypting files, making them completely inaccessible to users. Using sophisticated encryption algorithms, it locks you out of your own data essentially. So imagine a key to your door, it throws the key away and locks your door, making the retrieval process nearly impossible without a decryption key. So you're not getting your data back unless you have that decryption key. The encryption phase spreads rapidly, and it's quick. It happens within seconds, not minutes, seconds, causing widespread disruption for any business. So time is of the essence here, as containment becomes significantly harder the longer the malware is active. Now we move over to the ransom demand, so what the attackers actually want. So after successfully encrypting your data, the attackers issue a ransom demand essentially. So they ask you for money for your data, typically requesting payment in cryptocurrency, so the likes of Bitcoin and all the online currencies. This is so they remain anonymous. The demands usually come with a deadline, threatening payment, permanent data loss if you don't pay. And attackers often include proof of access to your files as well. So it just puts the pressure on you as a business owner into compliance. However, paying the ransom doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the data back and recover it. It may even encourage the attackers to do this again and leave you in a precarious position. Finally, you've got the data loss or recovery. So without robust backups or a strong security measure in place, recovering from a ransomware attack becomes a significant challenge. It's not easy to get out of. So even paying the ransom, as we've just mentioned, doesn't guarantee the data will be back. Attackers might withhold the decryption key or target you again later. In some cases, sensitive data may be still leaked or sold online, compiling the damage. So it is never a good thing. Ransomware operates with alarming speed, encrypting hundreds, if not thousands, of files within minutes. The rapid progression just shows how critical a proactive defense strategy is, including regular backups, advanced security tools, and a solid incident response plan to minimize downtime and protect your assets, essentially. So let me give you a quick example. One of our old customers were essentially hit by ransomware and fell victim to it. Within 20 minutes, 80% of their data was encrypted, and they had petabytes of data, meaning, it's completely inaccessible. Fortunately, they had invested in solid backups, which they had to, which allowed them to recover their systems without paying the ransom. However, it still left them, down for hours, impacting their operations, productivity, and everything else. Now, imagine if they hadn't have been prepared with a reliable backup solution and recovery plan. The financial and reputational damage could have been absolutely catastrophic. This serves as a reminder for everybody, really. Preparation isn't optional anymore. It's certainly essential. So it's just a point to really hit home on. You need to have the relevant things in place to protect your business for the worst case scenario. It's not if, it's when.
So how does ThreatLocker stop ransomware before it causes damage? Here's a breakdown. Application whitelisting. This security measure ensures that only pre-approved applications can execute on your devices. By creating a controlled list of trusted applications, it effectively blocks any unauthorized or malicious software. Even if ransomware manages to infiltrate the system, it won't be able to execute. This proactive approach significantly reduces the attack surface and adds an extra layer of defense against cyber threats. Ring fencing. Using tools like ThreatLocker, ring fencing isolates applications to limit their interactions with the rest of the system. This means that even if malware infiltrates a specific application, it's contained and cannot spread to other parts of your network. By restricting what applications can access and how they behave, ring fencing provides a powerful safeguard against ransomware and other threats, minimalising potential damage. Device control. Device control prevents unauthorized devices like USB drives from connecting to your systems and introducing ransomware. By restricting the use of external storage devices and peripherals, it reduces the risk of ransomware and other malicious software being introduced through physical means. This is particularly crucial in environments where employees might unknowingly use compromised devices. These layers of defense work together to block ransomware before it can execute. Even if an employee accidentally clicks on a phishing email, ThreatLocker is there to stop malware in its tracks. Question for everybody. Does anyone currently use application whitelisting in their business? If you can let us know in the chat. Let's take a closer look at the real-world ransomware attack and its severe ramifications. In October 2024, the British Library fell victim to a ransomware attack carried out by the Reseda Group, demonstrating the catastrophic impact of inadequate cybersecurity protections. This attack caused significant disruption, encrypting critical systems and extracting large amounts of sensitive data. Approximately 600 gigabytes of data was compromised, including personal data of staff and users. The attack left the organisation grappling with extensive operational challenges, highlighting the far-reaching consequences of the breach. The library's reliance on outdated IT infrastructure worsened the situation, delaying the recovery efforts and prolonging the downtime. This case is a stark reminder of the importance of a modern, proactive security measures required and a robust disaster recovery plan. It's a lesson to all organisations everywhere, including here in Lancashire, to prioritise cybersecurity before it's too late.
So here's a quick rundown of the attack. The attackers exploited a known vulnerability in one of the library servers, which had a delayed rollout of multi-factor authentication. This delay created an entry point for the Receiver ransomware group to gain access and execute their attack. Over 500,000 files were leaked and stolen, including personal information belonging to staff and partners. The library made the decision to not pay the ransom. However, the attackers retaliated by auctioning the stolen data on the dark web. This included sensitive files and personal information, further amplifying the damage caused by the breach. Now let's break down the official ramifications of this attack and what actually happened.
Legal ramifications. The legal consequence of a ransomware attack, particularly when personal data is involved, can be severe. Data privacy laws. The British Library, like many businesses, are subject to GDPR. When personal data is compromised, organisations must report the breach to the authorities, and failure to do so can result in significant fines. Under GDPR, fines reach up to 4% of annual global turnover or 20 million, whichever is higher. Non-compliance penalties. In this case, the British Library faced potential penalties for not securing the personal data of its users and employees. Even though they didn't pay the ransom, they were still liable for preventing the breach in the first place. Litigation risks. Victims of a data breach, whether they are individuals whose data was leaked or partners affected by the attack, could potentially sue for damages. This opens a door to costly litigation, even if the ransom is paid and the data is restored.
Financial ramifications. The financial impact of a ransomware attack extends far beyond the ransom demand itself. So here's a breakdown of the various financial ramifications the British Library faced. The initial obvious one, the ransom costs. Even though the British Library refused to pay the ransom, businesses that choose to pay often face steep demands, sometimes running into millions of pounds. Operational downtime. Ransomware attacks bring operations to an absolute standstill. The British Library experienced significant downtime as they worked to contain the breach and restore their systems. This downtime can lead to a loss of revenue, particularly for businesses that rely on continuous operations or e-commerce. Recovery costs. Even after an attack, businesses must invest in recovery, which can involve hiring cybersecurity experts to assess the damage and restore systems, implementing new security measures to prevent future attacks, paying for data recovery if possible, or the cost of recreating the lost data. And then another one which is probably worth mentioning, many companies now carry cybersecurity insurance. A successful attack often leads to increased premiums or difficulty renewing policies. Even if the insurance covers some of the costs, it's still a significant financial burden moving forward. So the British Library was left with an extensive recovery cost, which included hiring external consultants, enhancing cybersecurity infrastructure, costs that can easily exceed the ransom amount and equally be avoided.
Reputational ramifications. A ransomware attack can damage more than just your bottom line. It can severely affect your reputation. Trust erosion. When sensitive data is leaked, customers, employees and partners lose trust in your organisation's ability to protect their information. The British Library attack put the personal data of hundreds of thousands of people at risk, eroding public trust in the business. Long-term brand damage. Once your business is associated with a cyber attack, it's difficult to shake that stigma. Future clients or customers may hesitate to engage with you due to concerns about security. The media attention surrounding the British Library attack also amplified the reputational damage as the breach was widely reported. PR and crisis management. Following an attack, businesses often need to engage in significant public relation efforts to ensure stakeholders are happy. This can involve issuing public statements, working with legal teams, providing identity protection services for affected individuals. All of this comes at a cost, both financially and reputational. The long-term reputational impacts can affect the library's ability to secure funding or partnerships, and this is a risk that any business faces after an attack.
Now we move on to operational ramifications. So firstly, let me talk about the operational impact of ransomware. Let's pull that back. So system downtime. During the attack, many of the library systems were taken offline for several days, significantly hindering their ability to serve the public and conduct research. For businesses, this kind of downtime can result in missed deadlines, loss of productivity, and ultimately financial losses. Then we have data loss. In some cases, businesses are never able to fully recover their data, especially if they don't pay the ransom or the backups are insufficient. Even if you do recover, the downtime alone can cause irreversible operational damage. Future vulnerabilities. Even after an attack is over, thankfully, businesses are often left vulnerable for future attacks. Attackers keep backdoors in systems a lot of the time, but the British Library had to significantly overhaul its cybersecurity measures, and businesses in similar situations often need to implement long-term changes to avoid another incident. So this operational disruption can be devastating, especially for smaller businesses that don't have the resources or time to absorb any of this. So it's a lesson really for everybody to invest in the right things, because ultimately, if you don't, the risk is very, very high.
So, what can we learn from this? The British Library's example highlights the critical importance of a robust and proactive cybersecurity system. A solution like ThreatLocker could have stopped this breach in its tracks by preventing ransomware from executing in the first place. With advanced features such as application whitelisting, device control and ring fencing, businesses can dramatically reduce the risk of ransomware attacks. These tools ensure that only trusted applications can run. Unauthorized devices are blocked, and applications are isolated to contain potential threats. The consequences of an attack include leaked sensitive data, operational downtime, and reputational damage, are all both costly and far-reaching. By prioritising protective defence measures, businesses can protect themselves from a devastating impact we have discussed today and ensure their critical systems remain secure.
Now, let's move into our first live demonstration. For this demonstration, we've set up an intentionally unprotected PC. So no advanced endpoint protection, no firewalls, no ThreatLocker installed. The system is equipped with only basic antivirus software, which isn't updated, which, as you'll see, falls very short when it comes to stopping ransomware. We'll be using the infamous WannaCry ransomware for this demonstration. It's a real-world example of how quickly and effectively ransomware can compromise an unprotected system. Let's observe how long it takes for the system to be breached and its data to be encrypted, showcasing why advanced protection is absolutely critical in today's cybersecurity landscape. As I previously mentioned before, we're at a point now within the technology world where normal antivirus just isn't good enough these days. you've got to have another layer of protection. So if you bear with me 2 seconds, I'm just going to bring up the virtual machine we're using. All right. So this is the right one. Yeah. So as you can see here, on the next, Seamus is going to explain exactly what it's doing in just a moment. But essentially, this is a computer like any other. It's a Windows machine, as you can see. It's got some files in here, very important files, as you can see. There's lots of copies of them with very important information. So as it stands right now, this is a desktop which hasn't been intercepted by ransomware. So to set the scene, somebody has received an email with an attachment saying, download me. This employee or user isn't educated around phishing or malicious downloads or anything like that. So for this purpose, it's a relatively simple one. The file says download me, looks like a PDF, pretty straightforward. It generally opens up in a tab here. Now, let's go ahead and click this button and see what actually happens. What are you thinking? Well, Michael, what on earth's this? And then boom, you hit with this. It changes your screen. And essentially right now, this is encrypting all of your data on your PC. And the pop comes up, do you want it to make changes? Well, no, definitely no. So you get rid of that. And then you start reading the text behind and you're like, oh, what's this? And this is essentially what happens when you're hit by ransomware. So your device is now completely encrypted. And here is the information that the attackers have populated, essentially, telling you how to pay to get your files back. So they're quite, they go into detail on how to do it, which seems, pretty good. This one, thankfully, is only $300. But again, it's never worth paying the ransom. But as you see, they've put payment will be raised, how long you've got left here, and then how long you've got left until your data is destroyed. So naturally, you want to get rid of that and think, well, surely my files will be fine. Let's actually have a look at the documents itself to see what it looks like. So as you see here, it's encrypted every single file you own. So if you click into it, you can't physically open it. Try another one. Again, can't open it. And then this pops up again. So again, it's a stark reminder that this is real, and this is what hit the NHS a couple of years back. Naturally, this spread across the whole infrastructure and networks, and this basically brought the NHS to its knees. So this is the live demonstration part, and just imagine this happening to your business. What would you do in this situation? Fight or flight, panic mode, who knows? Hopefully you've got the right protections in place to prevent this stuff from happening in the first place. It's an important fact, and it's important to educate people on why we talk about the things we do because of these sorts of scenarios, and it's never great. So we'll move back to the presentation, and then we'll do the next demonstration of what happens with a ThreatLocker protected PC.
This is what happens when your system is left unprotected. Data loss. Critical files are encrypted, and without backups, they're gone, and gone for good. Business downtime. Your operations become a standstill. Financial loss. The cost of downtime, data recovery, or paying the ransom is substantial. And paying the ransom doesn't always guarantee you'll get the data back. Many attackers take the ransom and still leak the data or come back for more.
Now, let's examine a system that's fully protected. This PC has ThreatLocker installed, equipped with 3 critical layers of protection: application allow listing, ring fencing, and device control, everything we've previously mentioned. We'll now run the same WannaCry ransomware and observe how ThreatLocker defends the system. Watch closely as the features work together to stop the ransomware in its tracks, preventing it from executing and safeguarding the system's data. So we move on to the next demonstration. Let's get this one. Okay. So now this is a fully protected one. Seamus, do you want to explain what's going on this one?
Yeah, so when it comes to ThreatLocker takes a zero trust approach, which basically says, okay, let's allow all of the applications we know and trust run, and let's just block everything else. Simply as that. So it's application allow listing. It's been around for years. It's been quite difficult to manage and maintain, but ThreatLocker makes it easy. So that's your first line of defense, is that if we only allow what we need to run, we don't have to constantly look or detect or try to stop every unknown or malicious file from executing in the environment. We're just going to block everything.
So we'll go ahead now and execute the ransomware. Same scenario as before.
So exactly what's happening here is this particular application is not on our application allow list. So the first thing ThreatLocker will do is block and deny it. Now, this could be a genuine piece of software whereby a user will want to run this application, and hence we have this pop-up here where the user can actually request access to this application if it is a genuine application.
There we go. And again, you know, this is a clear-cut example of where, as we saw in the other one, it encrypted everything straight away, whereas now all of your documents, as shown before, are still here. So it takes away the risk of any ransomware, realistically, getting into the system. As you can see, all of the files and folders are still exactly where they were. So now we'll move back onto the presentation to run through some of the differences and the key differences.
Here's a comparison of the outcomes. Protected systems, ransomware blocked, no system damage, business continuity. Unprotected systems, data loss, system compromised, ransom demands. The difference is clear. Having advanced security tools like ThreatLocker in place makes all the difference.
Let's quickly recap why ThreatLocker is essential for a lot of businesses now. Application allow listing ensures only pre-approved applications or software can run on your system. This effectively blocks unauthorized or malicious programs, stopping ransomware or any other threats really from executing, even if they manage to infiltrate the network. Then we have ring fencing. This ensures that even if ransomware infiltrates the system, it's contained. It can't interact or spread with any other applications or critical parts of the network. Device control blocks any unauthorized devices such as USB sticks or USB rubber duckies, as some of you may know or may not know, from connecting to your network and injecting ransomware, or malware for that matter. This prevents external threats from bypassing other security measures and ensures only approved devices can interact with your systems. For example, the microphone I'm using now, I had to get that approved by our IT team before I could use it. So it's little things like that which are really important, and it gives a vital layer of protection, especially in environments where physical devices could pose a risk. So when combined with other security practices such as firewalls, regular backups, Sentinel-1 endpoint protection, and employee cybersecurity training, ThreatLocker provides a comprehensive, multi-layered defense. Each component plays a critical role. Firewalls blocks unauthorized access, backups ensure data recovery, Sentinel-1 adds advanced endpoint protection, and employee training reduces human error. Together with ThreatLocker's proactive measures, like application allow listing, ring fencing, and device control, these layers work seamlessly to protect your business from ransomware and any other cyber threats.
Here are some actionable steps you can take to protect your business. Regular backups. Ensure you are consistently backing up critical data to a secure location, and just as importantly, regular testing those backups to confirm they can be restored effectively. A best practice is a 3-2-1 backup rule. Keep 3 copies of your data, store it on 2 different media types, and ensure 1 copy is off-site. This approach minimises the risk of data loss due to ransomware, hardware failures, or physical disasters. With this strategy in place, you can recover your data quickly and avoid paying a ransom, ensuring business continuity. Endpoint protection. Use advanced tools like ThreatLocker to proactively stop attacks before they cause damage. With features such as application whitelisting, ring fencing, and device control, ThreatLocker provides a robust protection at the endpoint level, preventing ransomware and other malware from running. Advanced endpoint protection serves as a vital first line of defense, keeping your system secure and reducing the risk of breaches. Employee training. Ensure your team is equipped to recognise phishing emails and other common methods of attacks. Regular training sessions and controlled phishing programs help employees identify potential threats such as suspicious links, fake login requests, or unexpected attachments. A well-trained workforce is one of the most effective defences against cyber attacks, as it reduces the likelihood of human error leading to a security breach. Strong password policies and MFA. Protect all accounts with strong passwords, and these need to be unique and enforced with multi-factor authentication. Strong passwords should be complex, regularly updated, and never reused across accounts. Adding MFA provides an additional layer of security, requiring users to verify their identity through a second factor, such as a text message, app notification, or biometric scan. Together, these measures significantly reduce the risk of unauthorized access and make it harder for attackers to compromise your systems.
So, to help secure your business, we're excited to offer a special deal exclusive for today's attendees, a free vulnerability assessment to identify and address potential risks in your IT environment. So let's take action now. Protect your business from ransomware before it is too late. It's not if, it's when. So keep an eye on your inbox. Details about the offer will be sent out shortly after the webinar. So please do not miss the opportunity to strengthen your defences.
That brings us to the end of the presentation. I'd like to open.
So I'm conscious this is it's a very long video and loud, so we can use this time now to go through the Q&A session. So if you do have any questions around ThreatLocker, ransomware, or security as a whole, really, feel free to throw it into the Q&A session or the chat, and Seamus and I will be happy to assist or answer any questions you've got regarding anything security like, really. Is there anything you want to add to that, Seamus?
Yeah, so when it comes to ThreatLocker, a lot of clients will say, well, look, I have that endpoint protection in place already. with my EDR solution that we currently have in place. So what's the difference between applying ThreatLocker and having the current solution? So a typical EDR solution is looking for known threats and it's looking to block known threats. And the problem with an EDR solution is it has to be right 100,000% of the time. A ransomware attacker only needs to be right once. And if it can bypass that, you're basically you're a victim of a ransomware attack. Whereas with ThreatLocker, by applying that zero trust and only allowing what needs to run and blocking everything else, we're not constantly having to look for every new written malware that's out there, which on a daily basis there's hundreds. We're just stopping everything. On top of that, you did mention ring fencing. So ring fencing is very, very important when it comes to application allow listing. A lot of companies will implement application allow listing, but the problem with that is even in a Windows environment, there's certain applications that is required to run on the device in order to keep it running. One of the most weaponized applications in a Windows environment is PowerShell.
Thank you once again for joining.
And the reason why it's weaponized is because attackers know it's on every single device. So what we say is, okay, well, let's let a PowerShell run, but let's limit what it can and cannot do in the environment. So limit the data access, limit what applications it can interact with, limit even the internet connections it can make. So you're stopping those applications that you have allowed to run in the environment from being weaponized against yourself in the environment.
Oh, really insightful, that, Seamus. Thank you. I've just seen we've got a couple of questions in the chat now. I don't know if you've seen those, Seamus, but we'll just go down the list essentially. So, what's the adoption rate amongst our clients? Well, at Holker, we try and put ThreatLocker to all of our clients in the initial period. So we'll give them a trial when they come on as a client, and essentially that will go into learning mode for a period of time. And then after that period, we'll basically give them the option, do you want it or not? And 99% of the time, to be honest, they say yes, because they see the value in what it does and how it works and how it operates. So the adoption rate really, it's been taken really, really well. And we almost have it as a mandatory product these days, to be honest, because as we said in previously, a normal antivirus at this point in day and age isn't really enough. As we say, ransomware only has to be right once, and EDR and XDR 100% of the time. So yeah, I think it gives you a good understanding of why people take it. Do you want to get the next one, Seamus?
Yeah, so the next one is, does ThreatLocker run alongside existing malware systems or does it replace it? It runs alongside it because there's always going to be a need for detection and response. That need is never going to go away. But by implementing those zero trust policies in the first place, you're limiting what can happen in the environment. And again, certain applications or certain indicators of compromise with applications will occur, and that's where the need for that EDR system is definitely required in your environment as well. Because look, security is a layered approach, and that's the only way you can do it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, another great answer to that. Just going down the list. Clear files and backup in Windows 365. Can cyber attackers still get to these files? So, Helen, just in relation to your question, can cyber attackers get to the files? Well, it ultimately depends on where the files are stored and what files they are and what type of attack is happening. If somebody has maybe not ransomware on your device, but a direct connection to your device, then they probably will be able to see them. Ransomware, well, essentially it's a blanket cover, so it encrypts absolutely everything on your device and on your network. So if your documents are in a file server, for example, then those documents would be encrypted, unfortunately. And this is why we say you need to have multiple backups in multiple medias and in multiple locations, just to have that sense of relief, really. So if that does happen, you can essentially recover the data which is being encrypted. I hope that makes sense and answers the question. If you're talking about Microsoft 365, SharePoint, or OneDrive, what do you think, Seamus, on that one?
Yeah, so we see quite commonly with attacks whereby it's not just ransomware, you'll see primary refresh token stealing, which basically means an attacker gets onto a user's device, maybe through a phishing campaign. They'll steal their token, and the token basically is what authenticates them into Microsoft 365. And it pretty much allows them to log into Microsoft 365 without actually giving a password and bypass an MFA as well. So it is one of those things. And once they have that token stolen, they can pretty much log in from anywhere, and they have full access to your Microsoft 365. Anything you can access in Microsoft 365, they can access in Microsoft 365. And we have seen that on the increase quite a lot recently. Now there is a few tools in there that can actually protect the tokens as well, so and stop those from being stolen. But definitely, if anything is synced to Microsoft 365, like your OneDrive, your company OneDrive, or anything like that, if an attacker gets onto an endpoint and encrypts those files are also encrypted in Microsoft 365.
Yeah, and another thing to add to that as well, we'd always recommend using something called conditional access within 365. Yes. So I don't know if anybody's ever heard of it, but it basically implements certain policies. So, for example, if Seamus logged in at home at 9 a.m. and then he logged in France at 9:30 a.m., it's impossible travel. It's impossible that Seamus can get from his house in Ireland all the way to France in half an hour. So it uses intelligence and a couple of policies really to stop that sort of access, because nowadays, people sometimes can bypass MFA, which Seamus just touched on there, using the access tokens. So it's having the multi-layers of security in place to prevent that in the first place. So, as we said before, you're never going to be 100% secure. Nobody is. But all you can do is prepare your business and put it in the best possible position at the likely event of an attack. So hopefully that made some sense to you all. Let's rephrase the question, if you're allowed to say, what % of your customer base is using ThreatLocker today? Good question. I don't know the exact percentage, if I'm being honest with you, Mike. I can come back to you offline and come back to you with a certain number, I guess, and we can discuss offline. So thank you for your question.
Michael, there was another question, sorry, from Helen regarding how does ThreatLocker work with a company mobile phone?
Good question. Seamus, do you want to touch on that?
How does ThreatLocker work with a
mobile phone?
Company mobiles.
Currently, we don't support mobiles. But however, you just mentioned conditional access. ThreatLocker is bringing out a solution for conditional access from Microsoft 365 so that only devices with a ThreatLocker app installed on it will gain access to the Microsoft 365 environment.
Perfect. And to be fair, a lot of mobile devices these days, for them to be used from a work purpose, are generally enrolled in a mobile device management plan. So Intune, for example. And that inputs policies onto the device whereby you can't extract data or anything like that from your phone. If you ever lose your phone, it basically destroys all of the work data off. So Microsoft already have it's a good solution to date why people take that out. Now, phones in themselves are relatively secure. If you have an Apple phone, these days there's something called secure mode. I don't know if you've seen it in your settings. It came out recently. But if you ever feel as though your phone's got spyware on it or anything like that, you can basically click your phone into secure mode. And likewise with Android phones, on the unlikely event that it does become compromised, you have tools out there to protect yourself from them. So again, you can use tools like some EDRs and XDRs have relevant options you can look at. But generally speaking, having a decent mobile device management plan like 365 in tune is generally good enough for security stuff for mobile devices. And then, Seamus, do you want to cover the key items within ThreatLocker you'd say you must have set up?
Yeah, I'll actually take on both of those. So is there any key items within ThreatLocker you would say are must have set up? Obviously application allow listing is the primary goal. Once we allow only what we need to run, we're stopping everything else. The other parts of the ThreatLocker solution, which is all in the same agent, is the ring fencing is a given, stops the weaponization of our trusted applications. Storage control and network control. So ransomware is all about data. And if we can protect the data in the environment, we can stop ourselves from being a victim of a ransomware attack. And what I mean by that is with the ThreatLocker agent, we could say, okay, well, only our backup software, our backup data can be accessed by the backup software and nothing else in the environment. So even if there was a rogue application that was running on an unprotected device, it still cannot access that data. Network control then as well is a host-based firewall for each and every endpoint managed centrally from a single location. The biggest difference with our network control solution is that we keep everything in a closed state and only open it if and when required to authenticated devices, as in devices that have the ThreatLocker agent on it. What that means is if there was, for any reason, a rogue device got onto the network, it cannot access anything else on the network. It cannot do a port scan. It cannot run a vulnerability scan. It cannot do anything with those services in the environment. So network control is key because we have seen with a lot of ransomware attacks that 90% of ransomware attacks, according to Microsoft's recent study, actually occur from a device that is not protected on the actual network. So again, it's about locking out those unprotected devices from our networks.
And that's why the bring your own device policies came into force with a lot of businesses. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times, a couple of years back, you could probably sign into your Microsoft 365 account on your personal mobile phone without being rolled into a mobile device management plan. So what that means is when you signed in on your personal mobile phone, you could have access to all of the data within your work account, essentially. So that's your emails, your OneDrive, your Teams, SharePoint, the lot, essentially. And you could do whatever you wanted with that data. And essentially, your work or your business wouldn't know what was happening with the data. So it takes that structure and security away really from that element. And I think it's important, for every business these days to have an MDM in place, a mobile device management plan. Just to add to that there. I think that's everything. Let me just double check. Mike, so when purchasing ThreatLocker through Holker, do you deploy all of those key elements? Yes, we do. We have a consultation with yourself and explain, obviously, everything we've explained on this webinar, really, and advise the benefits of basically deploying all of those things. So yes, by default, it's all turned on. Hope that helped. I believe that's it for questions. Do you want to add anything else, Seamus?
No, there's nothing from me. Yeah, Lewis is all good. No, as I said, it's getting the concept across that, security is a layered approach, and by applying these layers to your environment, you're protecting yourself. Ransomware is on the increase. We see in the figures, particularly over the holiday periods, it's always on the increase of the holiday periods because hackers don't sleep seemingly. So and that's the time for them to carry out attacks. So by just adopting those security layers, you are going to protect yourself.
And cyber attackers these days, they've come a long way. It's no longer a kid in the basement with his hood up using tools. It's organizations in Russia, China, these people have pensions, they have annual leave, so they're full organised crime groups where they have all the same perks as a business would. So they work as a business unit, and they take it seriously, and they have sales meetings and sales forecasts for how many people they're going to hit. So it's definitely come a long way from what it was. And don't get me wrong, you still do get the kids in the bedrooms with the hoods up, with the likes of ChatGPT helping them to come up with scripts and stuff using kernel Linux and so on. But the reality is the real threats are still out there, and they are focusing on businesses, because ultimately that's where they're paying their mortgages. They see it as a full-time job, which it is. It's not a quick thing. It happens over a long period of time, and the social engineering element does anyway. So it's always good to, keep everyone up to date within your business around phishing and stuff like that. And, we can help with the phishing simulations. It's imperative that your staff can spot phishing emails. These days, they're getting more and more, well, they look more and more legit, should we say. So it's always good to keep everyone at the top tier on that sort of stuff.
The power of AI, correct spelling mistakes for phishing emails.
Yes.
So,
yes, definitely.
yes.
Perfect. Well, again, everybody, thank you for joining. I hope you have taken some value from today's webinar and learned a little bit more around ThreatLocker and cyber attacks as a whole. And as we say, if you do have any further questions you want to take offline, feel free to drop us an email, and you will receive an email shortly from us with the recorded version of the webinar, or a link to the webinar, and the vulnerability assessments as well. So again, thank you everybody for your time. I know we've jumped over slightly, but I believe it was worth it. So yeah, that's it from me, guys. So thank you again for joining, and have a lovely Christmas.
Thanks, everyone.